It was a sunny afternoon in a small town called Oakridge. The sun was shining bright, making everything look happy and warm. Birds were singing in the trees, and a soft wind moved the leaves just a little. Oakridge was a quiet place, the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else. Kids played in the streets, dogs barked at squirrels, and old folks sat on porches, sipping lemonade. It was peaceful, simple, and nice. Clara Thompson lived in a tiny house at the end of Pine Street. Her house was small, painted white with a red door. It had a little porch with a rocking chair that creaked when she sat in it. Clara stepped out of her house that afternoon, just like she did every day. She held a cane in her hand, a long, thin stick that helped her walk. Tap, tap, tap. That's the sound it made as it hit the ground. Clara couldn't see anything. Not the bright blue sky above her. Not the pretty yellow flowers growing by her steps. Not the green grass or the kids riding bikes down the road. She'd been blind since she was a little girl, so her world was all about sounds, smells, and feelings, not pictures. But Clara wasn't alone. Oh no, she had someone special with her. Right by her side walked Max, her guide dog. Max was a big dog, a German shepherd with thick, shiny fur. His fur was black and brown, and his eyes were dark and smart. He didn't bark a lot or run around like some dogs do. Max was calm. He stayed close to Clara, his big paws patting softly on the ground. His job was to help her. When Clara walked, Max made sure she didn't bump into things. If there was a step, he'd stop so she wouldn't trip. If there was a road, he'd wait until it was safe to cross. Max was her eyes, and he was really good at it. People in Oakridge saw Clara and Max walking together all the time. They'd see her tapping her cane and Max keeping her safe, and they'd talk about her. Poor Clara, they'd say in quiet voices. She can't see anything. She must feel so helpless without her eyes. They'd shake their heads and feel sorry for her. That nice lady, all alone with just a dog, they'd whisper. Life must be so hard for her. Some people even said it to her face. Clara, you're so brave, they'd tell her, patting her arm like she was a little kid. It's sad you can't see the world like we do. But here's the thing, those people were wrong. So wrong. Clara wasn't helpless. She wasn't weak. And she wasn't just some quiet lady who stayed out of the way. Nope. There was a lot more to Clara than anyone in Oakridge knew. And Max? He wasn't just any dog. Oh no, Max had a secret, a big, exciting secret that nobody saw coming. The people who felt sorry for Clara didn't know the truth. They didn't know what she could do or what Max could do. They thought they had her all figured out, but they were about to find out how amazing she really was. Picture this, Clara standing on her porch, the sun warm on her face. She couldn't see it, but she could feel it. The heat kissed her cheeks, and the breeze tickled her hair. She smiled a little, just a tiny curve of her lips. Max sat next to her, his big head held high. His ears perked up, listening to every sound, the birds, the wind, the faraway hum of a car. Clara took a deep breath, smelling the flowers and the fresh air. Ready, Max, she said in her soft voice. Max wagged his tail just once, like he was saying, yup, I'm ready. And off they went, down the steps, tap, tap, tap with her cane, and Max right beside her. That's how it started, just a normal day in Oakridge. Clara and Max were heading out for a walk, same as always. She wore a light blue dress and comfy shoes. Her hair was gray and tied back in a bun. She looked like any other older lady in town, nothing fancy or special. Max had his harness on, a strap that hooked around his chest so Clara could hold it. They moved together like a team, slow and steady. If you saw them, you might not think much of it. Just a blind lady and her dog, right? That's what everyone thought. But this wasn't going to be a normal day. Not at all. Now, let me ask you something before we go on. Have you ever met someone who seemed ordinary, like, really plain and simple, but then turned out to be extraordinary? Like, maybe a kid at school who's quiet but super smart? Or a neighbor who looks boring but once did something amazing? Think about it for a second. Maybe you've got a story like that in your head. Well, Clara and Max were about to show Oakridge that they weren't what they seemed. People thought they knew everything about her, but they didn't. Not even close. Let's go back to that sunny afternoon. Clara and Max were walking down Pine Street, heading toward the middle of town. The street was lined with big trees that made shade on the sidewalk. Kids were laughing somewhere nearby, playing tag or riding bikes. A lady waved from her garden, even though Clara couldn't see her. "Hi, Clara," she called. "Nice day, isn't it?" Clara nodded and said, "Sure is." Her voice was kind, but she didn't stop to chat. She kept walking, tap, 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 with Max leading the way. The town of Oak Ridge wasn't big. It had one main street with a few shops, a grocery store, a bakery, a little place that sold ice cream. There was a park with swings and a bench where old men played checkers. Everyone knew each other, and life moved slow. Most days, nothing exciting happened. People went to work, kids went to school, and dogs chased cats up trees. That's how it was. Quiet. Normal. Boring, even. But today was different. Something big was coming, and it all started with Clara and Max. See, Clara didn't mind that people felt sorry for her. She heard the whispers, "Poor thing, so helpless," and she let them think what they wanted. She didn't argue or tell them off. She just smiled and kept going. Why? Because Clara had a secret. She wasn't weak or scared. She'd been blind for years, sure, but that didn't stop her. She learned how to listen, to really hear the world. The sound of footsteps told her if someone was close. The wind told her which way it was blowing. Even the way Max moved told her things, like if the path was clear or if something was wrong. Clara was smart, tough, and strong in her own way. And Max? He was more than a guide dog. A lot more. Let's talk about Max for a minute. He wasn't like the other dogs in Oak Ridge. Most dogs there were small little fluffy ones that yapped at everything. Or they were lazy mutts that slept on porches all day. Not Max. Max was big and serious. His fur was thick, and his muscles showed when he walked. He didn't chase balls or bark at birds. He stayed focused, always watching, always listening. If you looked in his eyes, you'd see something different. They weren't soft or playful like a puppy's eyes. They were sharp, like he knew things other dogs didn't. Max wasn't just there to help Clara walk. He was her partner, her protector, her best friend. And soon, everyone would find out why. Back to that walk. Clara and Max turned onto Main Street, where the shops were. The bakery smelled like fresh bread, and Clara took a big sniff. Smells good, huh, Max, she said. Max didn't answer, of course he's a dog, but his tail wagged a little. They kept going, past the ice cream shop where kids were licking cones. "Hi, Clara," a little boy shouted, his mouth sticky with chocolate. "Hi there," she called back, smiling. Everything seemed normal. The sun was still shining, the town was still quiet, and Clara and Max were just doing their thing. But then, something changed. Far off, there was a sound. A low rumble, like thunder, but it wasn't a storm. Clara tilted her head, listening. Max's ears went up, and he stopped walking. The rumble got louder, closer. It wasn't thunder, it was engines. Big, loud engines. Clara didn't know it yet, but trouble was rolling into Oak Ridge. Trouble with leather jackets, mean laughs, and a leader named Spike. Trouble that thought Clara was an easy target. Trouble that didn't know about Max. What do you think happens when someone picks on the wrong person? Have you ever seen a bully get surprised? Maybe at school or in a game. Well, that's what's coming next. Clara and Max were about to meet some very rude bikers. And those bikers? They had no idea what they were walking into. Stick with me, because this story's about to get exciting. Think about that question, someone ordinary turning out extraordinary, and let's see what happens next on that sunny day in Oak Ridge. Clara and Max were walking down Main Street. It was a normal day in Oak Ridge, a small, quiet town where nothing big usually happened. The sun was bright, the air smelled like flowers and fresh bread from the bakery, and Clara's cane went tap, tap, tap on the sidewalk. Max, her big German Shepherd guide dog, stayed right by her side, his paws making soft thumps as he walked. Everything felt peaceful. Kids were eating ice cream nearby, and a lady was sweeping her porch across the street. Clara smiled a little, enjoying the warm day. She couldn't see the pretty colors or the happy faces, but she could hear them, and that was enough. Then, all of a sudden, a loud noise broke the quiet. It started far away, like a growl in the distance. Clara tilted her head to listen. Max stopped walking, his ears pointing straight up. The sound got louder and louder. Rumble, rumble, rumble. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't a storm. It was engines, big, noisy engines from motorcycles. The ground shook a little, and the windows in the shops rattled. Clara didn't know what was coming, but she could feel it. Something loud and wild was about to crash into her day. Down the street they came, a gang of bikers. There were 6 of them, all riding big, shiny motorcycles that roared like angry lions. Dust flew up behind them, making a cloud that floated over Main Street. The bikers wore black leather jackets covered in patches, pictures of skulls, snakes, and words like bad boys sewn on. Their hair was messy, some had beards, and they all looked tough. The leader was a tall guy named Spike. He had a mean grin on his face, the kind that says, "I'm trouble, and I like it." His jacket had a big red patch with a dragon on it, and his motorcycle was the loudest of all. Vroom, vroom. He revved it just to make it scream. The gang slowed down and stopped right near Clara and Max. Their bikes lined up in a row, puffing out smoke that smelled like gas. People on the street turned to look. The lady with the broom froze. Kids with ice cream stopped licking and stared. The bikers didn't care. They acted like they owned the town. Spike swung his leg off his bike and stood up, his boots kicking up more dust. He looked at Clara, who was standing still, her cane in one hand and Max's harness in the other. Spike's grin got bigger, like a cat who just saw a mouse. "Hey, lady!" Spike yelled, his voice loud and rough. He laughed as he said it, like he thought something was really funny. "What's a blind chick like you doing out here?" He took a step closer, pointing at her with a dirty finger. "Gonna trip over your own feet or what?" His laugh was mean, and it echoed down the street. The other bikers laughed too, slapping their legs and making big, ugly noises. Ha ha ha. They thought Spike was so clever, and they wanted to join in. One biker, a short guy with a scruffy beard, pointed at Max. "Look at that mutt," he sneered. His voice was high and nasty, like a bully picking on someone smaller. "Bet he can't even fetch a stick." The others nodded and chuckled. "Yeah, what a dumb dog," another one said. He had a missing tooth, and his laugh sounded like a snort. "Stupid blind lady and her stupid dog," he added, kicking a pebble toward them. The pebble bounced and landed near Max's paws, but Max didn't move. He just stood there, quiet and still. Clara didn't say anything. Her face didn't change. She didn't frown or cry or yell back. She just stayed calm, like the words didn't even touch her. Her hand gripped Max's harness a little tighter, though. Her fingers squeezed the strap, but that was the only sign she heard them. Max didn't bark or growl. He didn't wag his tail or jump at the bikers. He stayed right where he was, his big body steady next to Clara. His dark eyes watched Spike, then the others, moving slow and careful. If you looked close, you'd see his ears twitch just a tiny bit, like he was listening hard. But he didn't make a sound. Why not? What was going on in his head? Spike didn't like that Clara didn't answer. He wanted her to be scared or mad. He leaned closer, so close she could smell the smoke and sweat on him. "Hey, I'm talking to you, Granny," he said, his voice sharper now. "Move it, or we'll make you." He took another step, his boots stomping loud on the ground. Thump, thump. The other bikers cheered him on. "Yeah, Spike, show her," one shouted. "Get her out of here," another yelled. They revved their engines, vroom, vroom, making the air shake again. The noise was so loud it hurt your ears, and the dust got thicker, swirling around Clara and Max like a storm. The tension was heavy, like a big, dark cloud hanging over Main Street. You could feel it in your chest, something bad was starting. The bikers were big and loud, and Clara was just one lady with a cane. She couldn't see them coming. She couldn't run away. And Max? He looked like a regular dog, just sitting there. The townsfolk watching didn't know what to do. The lady with the broom stepped back. The kids with ice cream hid behind a bench. Everyone thought the same thing, Clara was in trouble, and nobody could help her. But Clara wasn't scared. She stood there, her back straight, her face still blank. She heard every word Spike said. She heard the laughs, the sneers, the engines. She felt the dust on her skin and the rumble under her feet. And she knew Max was with her. Her hand stayed on his harness, and she could feel him strong, steady, ready. What was she thinking? Was she mad? Was she planning something? Nobody could tell. Her quietness made Spike mad, but it also made you wonder. Why wasn't she yelling back? Why wasn't Max barking? Spike kept going. What's wrong with you, huh? He said, his grin turning into a snarl. Too scared to talk? Or just too dumb? He laughed again, but it sounded fake now, like he was trying too hard. He waved his hand at the other bikers. Look at her, guys. Thinks she's tough or something. The gang laughed louder, ha ha ha, but it was nervous laughter. Something about Clara's calm face bothered them. She wasn't acting like they expected. Most people would shout or cry or run. Not Clara. She just stood there, like a tree that won't bend in the wind. The short biker with the beard tried again. That dog's useless, he said, spitting on the ground. Can't even bark. What kind of guide dog is that? He kicked another pebble, harder this time. It flew past Max and hit a shop window with a ping. Max's head turned just a little, following the sound, but he didn't move. His eyes locked on the biker for a second, then went back to Spike. It was creepy how quiet he was. Dogs bark at strangers, right? They growl when someone's mean. But Max didn't. He was like a statue, a big, furry statue with smart eyes. Spike stepped even closer. His shadow fell over Clara, blocking the sun. Last chance, lady, he said, his voice low and mean. Get out of our way, or we'll roll right over you. He cracked his knuckles pop, pop, like he was ready to fight. The other bikers got off their bikes now, standing behind him. They looked like a wall of leather and dirt, all grinning and waiting for Clara to give up. The air felt tight, like it was holding its breath. Something was going to happen. Something big. The townsfolk watched, eyes wide. A man at the bakery peeked out his door, then ducked back inside. A little girl with ice cream whispered, "Mommy, is the lady okay?" Her mom pulled her close and said, "SHH, don't look." They thought Clara was done for. She was blind, she was alone, and these bikers were mean. How could she fight back? How could Max stop them? It looked bad, really bad. But Clara didn't move. She didn't step back or run away. She stood her ground, her cane tapping once tap like she was saying, "I'm right here." Max didn't budge either. His big body stayed close, his fur brushing Clara's leg. His ears were up, his eyes sharp, watching every move the bikers made. The tension grew thicker. Spike's grin started to fade. He didn't like this. He wanted her to be scared, and she wasn't. He wanted Max to bark or run, and he didn't. What was wrong with these two? Let's think about that for a second. Why didn't Clara say anything? Most people would yell, "Leave me alone," or "Help." But not her. She was quiet, like she knew something the bikers didn't. And Max, why didn't he bark? Dogs love to bark at loud things, like engines or strangers. But Max was different. He wasn't scared. He wasn't even mad, not yet. He just watched, like he was waiting. Waiting for what? That's the big question. Spike tried one more time. "You deaf too, huh?" he shouted, waving his arms. "Move it, old lady, or you're toast." He laughed, but it sounded shaky. The other bikers joined in HAHA, but they looked at each other, unsure. Clara's calm was getting to them. She wasn't playing their game, and it made them nervous. The short biker muttered, "What's with that dog? He's weird." Another one nodded. "Yeah, he's too quiet. I don't like it." The rumble of the engines died down a little. The bikers weren't revving them as much now. The dust settled, and the street got still. Clara stood there, Max beside her, facing Spike and his gang. The tension was so thick you could almost touch it. Something was coming. Something nobody expected. The bikers thought they were in charge, but were they? Clara and Max didn't look like much a blind lady and her dog, but looks can trick you. And in Oak Ridge, on that sunny day, the trick was about to start. What do you think Clara was thinking? Was she planning something? And Max, why was he so quiet? Stick around, because this story's just getting started. Trouble was here, but Trouble didn't know who it was messing with. Days went by after that first big run-in with the bikers. The sun kept shining over Oak Ridge, the little town where Clara and Max lived. Things seemed normal on the outside. Kids played, birds chirped, and the bakery still smelled like warm bread. But there was something different now. The bikers didn't leave. They stuck around, riding their loud motorcycles up and down Main Street, making noise and trouble wherever they went. And every time Clara walked by, they were there, ready to pick on her. It started small at first. Clara would be out with Max, her cane going tap, tap, tap on the sidewalk, and the bikers would spot her. Their engines would growl vroom, vroom, louder than ever, just to mess with her. Spike, the leader with the mean grin, loved it the most. He'd lean on his bike, watching her with his arms crossed, then shout something rude. "Lost your way again, huh?" he'd taunt, his voice loud and nasty. "Need a map, blind lady?" He'd laugh, and the other bikers would join in ha, like it was the funniest thing ever. They'd rev their engines even more, making the air shake and the dust fly. Clara didn't say anything back. She never did. She'd just keep walking, her face calm and blank, like the words didn't even reach her. Max stayed right by her side, his big paws stepping steady and quiet. The bikers didn't stop, though. Day after day, they kept it up. If Clara went to the store, they'd be there, parked outside, yelling stuff like, "Hey, Granny, don't trip." If she walked to the park, they'd zoom by, engines roaring, trying to scare her. "Look at her stumble," one biker would shout, pointing and laughing. "What a joke," another would add, snorting like a pig. The people in town saw it all happen. The lady who swept her porch watched from her steps. The man at the bakery peeked out his window. The kids eating ice cream stared with big eyes. They didn't like what the bikers were doing, but nobody said a word. Why? Because Spike and his crew were tough. They were loud, they were mean, and they didn't care who they scared. Nobody wanted trouble with them. "Better stay out of it," the townsfolk whispered to each other. "Those guys are bad news." So they stayed quiet, pretending not to see, hoping the bikers would get bored and leave. But the bikers didn't get bored. They kept coming back, day after day, picking on Clara every chance they got. It wasn't just words, either. Sometimes they'd toss little rocks near her feet, laughing when they bounced off the ground. "Oops, missed," they'd yell, acting like it was a game. Other times, they'd ride their bikes real close, so close the wind from them pushed against her dress. "Move faster, old lady." Spike would holler, revving his engine vroom, right in her ears. It was mean, really mean, and it didn't stop. Clara kept walking, though. She didn't run away or hide in her house. Every day, she'd step out with her cane and Max, going where she needed to go. She didn't let the bikers stop her. Her face stayed calm, her steps stayed steady, and Max stayed with her like a shadow. He was always there, his big body close to her legs, his harness in her hand. If you didn't look close, you'd think nothing was different. Clara and Max looked the same as always, just a blind lady and her dog, doing their thing. But if you did look close, you'd see something odd. Something that didn't quite fit. Max didn't act like most dogs. When the bikers revved their engines vroom, vroom, loud enough to make your ears hurt, Max didn't flinch. He didn't jump or bark or tuck his tail. Most dogs would. If a car honks or a kid yells, dogs usually perk up or get scared. Not Max. His ears stayed sharp, pointing up like little triangles, but he didn't move. The noise didn't bother him at all. And when the bikers shouted their mean words, Max didn't growl or snap. He just stood there, quiet and still, his dark eyes watching them. Those eyes were something else. If you looked into them, you'd see they weren't soft or playful like a puppy's. They were smart, really smart. Max's eyes locked on the bikers like he was studying them. He'd watch Spike lean on his bike, grinning that mean grin. He'd watch the short biker with the scruffy beard toss rocks. He'd watch the one with the missing tooth rev his engine. Max didn't miss a thing. His head would turn just a little, following their every move, but he didn't bark or chase them. He just watched, like he was figuring them out. Why? What was he waiting for? The bikers didn't notice at first. They were too busy laughing and shouting to care about a quiet dog. Look at that mutt, they'd say. Too dumb to bark. They thought Max was nothing special, just a boring guide dog who didn't do much. Spike would smirk and say, "What's he gonna do, huh? Lick us to death." The others would crack up ha ha ha, and keep on teasing. They didn't see what Max was really like. They didn't see his sharp ears or his steady eyes. They thought he was weak, just like they thought Clara was weak. Oh, how wrong they were. Then one day, something happened. It was a sunny afternoon, just like the others. Clara and Max were walking near the park. The grass was green, the swings were empty, and a few kids were playing nearby. One little boy, maybe 6 years old, was bouncing a red ball. He laughed as he tossed it up and caught it. Bounce, bounce, bounce. But then he dropped it. The ball slipped out of his hands and rolled away, bouncing down the sidewalk. It rolled right toward Clara and Max, then kept going, heading straight for the street where the bikers were hanging out. Spike was there, leaning on his bike, talking to his crew. He saw the ball coming and grinned. The ball stopped near his feet, and the little boy ran after it, calling, "My ball! My ball!" Spike didn't pick it up. Nope. He pulled his leg back and kicked it thwack, hard into the street. The red ball flew fast, bouncing over the pavement, way out of reach. "Go get it, kid!" Spike yelled, laughing loud. The other bikers laughed too, ha, watching the boy stop and stare as his ball disappeared. The little boy's face fell. He looked like he might cry. Clara heard it all, the thwack of the kick, the laughs, the boy's sad little gasp. She tilted her head, listening. Max turned his head too, his eyes on the ball as it rolled away. The bikers kept laughing, thinking it was so funny. "Stupid kid," one said. "Can't even hold a ball," another added. They didn't care that the boy was upset. They didn't care about anything but being mean. Clara stood still for a second, her cane in her hand. Then, in a soft voice, she said, "Max, fetch." It was so quiet you could barely hear it, but Max heard. Oh, he heard. In a flash, Max moved. He darted out from Clara's side, his big legs pumping fast. He was like a streak of black and brown fur, zooming across the street. The ball was still rolling, bouncing farther away, but Max was on it. His jaw snapped shut, chomp, and he caught it mid-roll, right before it went under a car. Then he turned around, trotted back, and dropped the ball at the little boy's feet, plop, like it was no big deal. The boy's eyes got big. "Wow," he said, picking up his ball. "Thanks, doggy." He hugged the ball and smiled at Max. Clara smiled too, just a little, her head still tilted like she was listening. The townsfolk nearby saw it happen. The lady on her porch gasped. The man at the bakery clapped. "Good dog," someone called. It was fast, so fast it was over before you could blink. Max went back to Clara's side, sitting down like nothing happened, his harness back in her hand. The bikers stopped laughing. They stared at Max, their mouths open a little. Spike's grin faded, just a tiny bit. He hadn't expected that. "Lucky trick," he muttered, crossing his arms. "Big deal." The other bikers nodded, but they didn't sound so sure. "Yeah, just luck," one said. "Dumb dog got lucky," another grumbled. They tried to act like it didn't matter, but you could tell it bugged them. How did Max move so fast? How did he catch that ball like it was nothing? They didn't know, and it made them squirm. Clara didn't say anything. She didn't brag or smile big. She just started walking again, tap, tap, tap with her cane, Max right beside her. The bikers watched her go, their engines quiet for once. The little boy bounced his ball again, happy now, but the bikers weren't. Something about Max's speed stuck in their heads. It wasn't just a trick. It wasn't just luck. There was more to that dog, and maybe to Clara too. But what? They didn't know yet, and neither did the town. That moment with the ball was small, but it was a hint. A little clue that things weren't what they seemed. Max wasn't just a guide dog. Clara wasn't just a quiet lady. The bikers didn't see it, not all of it, but they felt it. And that feeling? It was going to grow. The teasing didn't stop after that day, but it changed a little. Spike still shouted, the engine still roared, but there was a question in their minds now. What else could Max do? What else was Clara hiding? Trouble was brewing, and it was getting closer every day. Stick with me, this story's about to get even wilder. It was a quiet Saturday in Oakridge. The sun was up, the sky was blue, and the little town felt calm, like it always did. Birds chirped in the trees, and a soft wind rustled the leaves. Kids weren't running around as much today, most were home or at the park, playing on the swings or eating snacks. Clara Thompson decided it was a good day for a walk. She stepped out of her little white house with the red door, her cane in one hand and Max's harness in the other. Tap, tap, tap went her cane on the porch steps. Max, her big German Shepherd guide dog, stayed close, his paws thumping softly as they went down together. Clara liked the park. It wasn't far from her house, just a few streets away, and it was a nice place to feel the breeze and hear the world. She couldn't see the green grass or the tall trees, but she could smell the flowers and hear the creak of the swings. Max liked it too. He'd walk with her, steady and calm, making sure she didn't trip over roots or benches. Today, they headed there, just like they'd done lots of times before. Clara wore her blue dress and comfy shoes. Max had his harness on, looking big and strong like always. It seemed like a normal day. But it wasn't going to stay that way. They got to the park, and Clara started crossing the grassy area near the swings. Tap, 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 her cane moved slow and sure. Max stayed right by her side, his ears up, listening to every sound. The park was quiet at first. A few people were around, an old man on a bench reading a book, a mom pushing her kid on a swing. They waved at Clara, even though she couldn't see them. "Hi, Clara," the mom called. "Hi," Clara said back, smiling a little. Everything felt peaceful. But then, that peace broke apart. A loud rumble started in the distance. Clara tilted her head. Max's ears twitched. The sound got closer, rumble, 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 and then it roared into the park. It was the bikers. Spike and his gang came tearing in on their big motorcycles, engines growling like angry beasts. Dirt flew up as their tires ripped through the grass. They didn't care about the park rules or the people there. They zoomed around, making a big circle right around Clara and Max. Vroom, vroom, vroom. The noise was so loud it shook the ground, and the air filled with dust and the smell of gas. The old man on the bench dropped his book. The mom grabbed her kid off the swing and ran to the side. Other people started showing up too, peeking out from behind trees or benches, watching with big eyes. The bikers didn't stop. They kept circling, their engines screaming, closing in tighter and tighter around Clara. She stood still, her cane in her hand, Max beside her. The dust swirled around them, but she didn't move. Max didn't move either. They looked small in the middle of that noisy, dusty circle, like a little island in a storm. Spike jumped off his bike. His boots hit the ground hard thump, and he stomped over to Clara. His leather jacket flapped in the wind, and his mean grin was back, bigger than ever. The other bikers turned off their engines one by one, watching him. The noise died down, but the air still felt heavy, like something bad was about to happen. Spike stood right in front of Clara, so close she could hear his breathing. "Time's up, lady," he snarled, his voice low and rough. He cracked his knuckles pop, pop, and leaned in. "Let's see if your dumb dog can save you now." He laughed, a short, ugly laugh, and reached out with his big hand to grab her arm. Clara didn't flinch. She didn't step back or scream. She just stood there, her face calm, her hand tight on Max's harness. Spike's fingers were inches from her arm, ready to yank her. The crowd held its breath. The bikers grinned, thinking Spike was about to win. But he never got the chance. Because Max moved. It happened so fast it was like lightning. Max lunged forward, a blur of fur and muscle. 1 second he was sitting still, the next he was in the air, flying at Spike. His big body hit Spike like a truck wham, and knocked him flat on his back. Before Spike could blink, Max pinned him down. His strong paws pressed on Spike's chest, holding him to the ground. Max's teeth were out, sharp and white, just inches from Spike's throat. A low growl rumbled from his chest, growling quiet but scary. Spike froze. His eyes got huge, and his mean grin disappeared. The other bikers jumped back. "Whoa," one yelled, dropping his helmet. "What the?" another shouted, tripping over his own bike. They didn't move to help Spike. They just stared, mouths open, eyes wide like dinner plates. The crowd gasped, all at once. The old man's book fell again. The mom hugged her kid tighter. Nobody could believe it. Max wasn't just fast, he was strong, fierce, like a wild animal. He held Spike down like it was easy, his teeth so close Spike didn't dare breathe too hard. Clara stepped forward. Tap, tap, her cane hit the ground as she moved closer to Spike. Her face was still calm, but her voice was steady and clear, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "You should know something about Max," she said. She didn't yell or sound mad. She just talked, soft but firm, so everyone could hear. "He's not just my guide. He's a retired Navy SEAL K9. She paused, letting the words sink in. "Trained to take down enemies way tougher than you." The park went silent. No engines, no laughs, no wind, just Clara's voice and Max's growl. Spike's face went pale, like all the color drained out of it. His eyes darted from Clara to Max, then back again. What?" he stammered, his voice shaky. The other bikers blinked, looking at each other. "Navy SEAL," one whispered. "Like, the Army," another muttered. The crowd started buzzing. "A Navy SEAL dog," a lady said. "No way," a kid yelled, peeking out from behind his mom. People couldn't believe it. Max wasn't just a pet. He was a warrior, a real, trained fighter from the Navy SEALs. Clara stood there, her cane in one hand, her other hand resting on Max's harness. Max didn't let up. He kept Spike pinned, his growl steady, growling, his eyes locked on Spike's face. Spike didn't move. He couldn't. Max was too strong, too fast, too scary. The big, tough biker who'd been picking on Clara for days looked small now, lying in the dirt with a dog holding him down. The crowd got louder, whispering and pointing. "Did you hear that? A SEAL dog. Spike's in trouble now." "Let's talk about what Clara said. A Navy SEAL K9 isn't just any dog. The Navy SEALs are super tough soldiers, some of the best in the world. They fight bad guys, go on secret missions, and do things most people can't even imagine. And they're dogs. They're trained to be just as tough. Navy SEAL K9s learn how to find bombs, chase enemies, and protect their people. They're brave, smart, and strong like superheroes with fur." Max was one of those dogs, retired now, helping Clara instead of soldiers. But he still had all that training, all that power, ready to come out when he needed it. Spike didn't know that. None of the bikers did. They thought Max was just a boring guide dog, slow, weak, nothing special. They laughed at him, called him a mutt, said he couldn't do anything. But they were wrong. So wrong. That day in the park, Max showed them. He wasn't just fast like when he got the ball. He wasn't just smart like when he watched them. He was a fighter, a real one, and he'd been hiding it all along, waiting for the right time. Clara knew it too. She'd known all along. That's why she stayed calm when the bikers teased her. That's why she didn't yell or run. She had Max, and Max had her back. When Spike reached for her, she didn't need to be scared. She just said, "Max," and he took care of it. Now Spike was on the ground, pale and shaking, and the other bikers didn't know what to do. They'd circled Clara, thinking they were big and tough, but Max flipped it all around. One move, and he showed them who was really in charge. The crowd couldn't stop talking. "I knew there was something about that dog," the old man said, picking up his book. "He's amazing," the kid with the mom shouted, clapping his hands. "Clara's tough," a lady added, smiling big. They'd watched the bikers pick on her for days, and now they saw the truth. Clara wasn't helpless. Max wasn't ordinary. Together, they were something special, something nobody in Oak Ridge expected. Spike tried to talk again. "Gee, get him off me," he whined, his voice high and scared. He didn't sound tough anymore. He sounded like a kid who'd lost a fight. Max didn't move. His growl stayed low, growling, and his teeth stayed close. Clara tapped her cane once, tap, and said, "Not yet." She wasn't done. She wanted Spike to hear her, to understand. The bikers had pushed her too far, and now they were finding out what happens when you mess with the wrong person and the wrong dog. This was the big moment. The showdown everyone had been waiting for, even if they didn't know it. The bikers thought they could scare Clara, push her around, make her feel small. But they didn't know who she really was or who Max was. That quiet Saturday in the park turned into something wild, something huge. Max wasn't just a guide dog. He was a hero. And Clara? She was tougher than anyone thought. The reveal was out, and nothing would be the same in Oakridge after this. What happens next? Oh, it's going to be good, stick around. Okay, everyone, hold on tight because we're at the part where everything gets sorted out. The park in Oakridge was buzzing with excitement after Max pinned Spike to the ground. That big, mean biker wasn't so tough anymore. He was flat on his back, dirt all over his leather jacket, and Max's sharp teeth were super close to his throat. Spike's face was white, like he'd seen a ghost, and his hands were shaking. He didn't look like the loud, rude guy who'd been picking on Clara for days. Nope, he looked scared, really scared. Max didn't move. He stayed right there, holding Spike down with his big paws. His growl was low and rumbly, like a quiet thunderstorm growling, and it made the air feel heavy. The other bikers didn't know what to do. They stood by their motorcycles, mouths open, eyes big, just staring. They'd been laughing and shouting all this time, but now, not a peep. They looked like statues, too shocked to move. The crowd around the park, folks who'd come to see what was happening, whispered to each other. Did you see that? Max is amazing. Spike's in big trouble now. Everyone was talking, but nobody dared get close. Clara stood nearby, her cane tapping the ground once tap like she was waiting. Her face was still calm, just like always. She didn't yell or cheer. She didn't even smile big. She just listened, her head tilted a little, hearing Spike's shaky breaths and Max's growl. Spike finally found his voice, though it didn't sound tough anymore. Okay, I'm sorry, he said, his words coming out fast and high, like a little kid who got caught being naughty. Please, get him off me. I won't do it again, I swear. He wiggled a bit, trying to move, but Max pressed down harder, growling, and Spike stopped quick. Clara didn't say anything right away. She let Spike squirm for a few more seconds, his boots kicking the dirt. Then she nodded, just once, slow and sure. Max, she said, her voice soft but clear. That was all it took. Max stopped growling. He lifted his paws off Spike's chest and stepped back, smooth as can be. He didn't bark or snap. He just walked right to Clara's side, like nothing big had happened. His harness clicked into her hand, and he sat down, big and steady, like a guard keeping watch. Spike stayed on the ground, breathing hard, too scared to get up yet. The other bikers snapped out of it then. They saw Spike was free, and they didn't waste time. Let's go, one yelled, jumping on his bike. Yeah, quick, another shouted, kicking his engine on vroom. They scrambled like ants when you kick their hill, all rushing to get away. Their motorcycles roared to life, puffing out smoke, and they started rolling toward the park exit. They didn't look so tough anymore. They looked like they wanted to disappear, fast. But they didn't get far. A loud siren cut through the air, wee-oh-oh, and red and blue lights flashed at the edge of the park. It was the sheriff. He drove up in his big white car with Oakridge Sheriff painted on the side. His hat was on straight, and his badge shone in the sun. He stepped out, boots crunching on the grass, and put his hands on his hips. Not so fast, he said, his voice deep and strong. The bikers froze again, their engines rumbling but not moving. The sheriff walked right in front of them, blocking the way out. Harassing folks stops today, he told them, looking at each biker one by one. Spike finally got up, brushing dirt off his jacket, but he didn't dare talk back. His face was still pale, and his grin was gone for good. The sheriff pointed at him. You're the leader, huh? Well, you're done causing trouble in my town. He pulled out a pair of shiny handcuffs, click, click, and snapped them on Spike's wrists. Spike didn't fight. He just looked down, mumbling, I said I was sorry. The sheriff didn't care. Sorry doesn't fix what you did, he said, leading Spike to the car. The other bikers tried to sneak away, but the sheriff's deputy showed up to another car with lights flashing. "Oh no you don't," the deputy said, waving them back. "You're all in this mess together." The sheriff and deputy rounded up the whole gang. They took their keys, turned off their bikes, and lined them up by the road. "You've been scaring people too long," the sheriff said. "Now you pay for it." He wrote them tickets, big fines they'd have to pay with money. And their bikes? Those got taken away, loaded onto a big truck that hauled them off. The bikers groaned, "Ah, man," but they couldn't stop it. Word spread fast in Oak Ridge. People came out of their houses, peeked from windows, and talked on porches. "The bikers are gone," they said. "The sheriff got 'em." But that wasn't all they talked about. They talked about Clara and Max. "Did you hear what happened?" a lady asked her neighbor. "That dog took down Spike," a kid shouted, running down the street. "Clara's not helpless, she's a force," an old man said, nodding like he'd known it all along. The whispers changed. Before, they'd said, "Poor Clara," and felt sorry for her. Now they said, "Wow, Clara's tough, and Max is the coolest dog ever." Clara didn't stick around to hear it all. After the sheriff showed up, she turned and walked away, tap, tap, tap with her cane. Max trotted beside her, proud and tall, his tail up just a little. They crossed the park, past the swings and the trees, heading back toward home. The crowd watched them go, some clapping, some cheering. "Way to go, Clara," a lady called. "Good boy, Max," a kid yelled. Clara didn't stop or wave. She just kept going, calm as ever, like it was no big deal. But if you looked close, you might have seen a tiny smile on her face, a secret smile that said she knew what they'd done. The townsfolk couldn't stop staring. They saw Clara in a new way now. She wasn't just the quiet blind lady who lived on Pine Street. She was strong, smart, and brave. And Max? He wasn't just a guide dog. He was a hero, a Navy SEAL canine who'd protected her like a champ. People who used to whisper pity now looked with big, wide eyes full of respect. "I can't believe it," a man said, shaking his head. "She stood up to those bikers," a lady added, smiling. "And that dog, he's like a superhero," a kid said, jumping up and down. Back at the park, the sheriff finished with the bikers. Spike sat in the back of the car, hands cuffed, staring out the window. His gang stood by the road, heads down, waiting for their turn to talk to the deputy. Their bikes were gone, their loud engines silent, and their mean laughs were nowhere to be heard. "You'll think twice before bothering folks again," the sheriff said, closing his notebook. "Oak Ridge is a nice town, and we're keeping it that way." He tipped his hat to the crowd, then drove off with Spike. The deputy stayed to clean up the rest. Clara and Max got home a little while later. The sun was starting to set, turning the sky pink and orange. Clara opened her red door, tap, tap up the steps, and Max followed her inside. The house was quiet, just how they liked it. She put her cane by the wall and sat in her rocking chair on the porch. Creak, creak, it rocked back and forth. Max lay down next to her, his big head resting on his paws. They didn't talk about what happened. They didn't need to. They'd done what they had to do, and that was enough. People in town kept the story going, though. By dinner time, everyone knew. "Clara's tougher than she looks," they said over plates of food. "Max is a Navy SEAL dog, can you believe it?" they told their kids. The next day, folks stopped by her house with little gifts, cookies, flowers, even a chew toy for Max. "Thank you," Clara said, her voice soft. "Good boy," they'd tell Max, patting his head. He'd wag his tail once, then sit still again, calm and cool like always. The bikers didn't come back. Word got around that Spike and his crew had to pay big fines, lots of money they didn't want to spend. Their bikes were locked up somewhere, and the sheriff made sure they knew Oak Ridge wasn't their playground anymore. "Stay out," he told them, and they did. The streets got quiet again, no more rumbling engines, no more mean shouts. Kids went back to playing, dogs barked at squirrels, and old folks sat on porches like before. Peace was back, thanks to Clara and Max. Clara didn't change much after that. She still walked with her cane, tap, 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 and Max still guided her every day. They went to the store, the park, the bakery, just like always. But people treated her different now. They didn't whisper "poor thing" anymore. They smiled and said, "Hi, Clara," with big, happy voices. They waved, even though she couldn't see, and they talked about her like she was a star. "She's amazing," they'd say. "Her and that dog, they're the best." Max didn't change either. He stayed the same big, quiet German shepherd, walking by Clara's side, watching the world with his smart eyes. But folks noticed him more now. "That's the seal dog," kids would whisper, pointing from across the street. "He's so cool," they'd say, giggling. Some even tried to pet him, but Max just sat there, letting Clara decide. She'd nod, and he'd let them, wagging his tail just a tiny bit. He didn't need the attention, he was happy just being with Clara. The story of that Saturday stuck in Oak Ridge like glue. People told it over and over at school, at the store, at bedtime. "Remember when the bikers messed with Clara?" they'd start. "And Max took em down," they'd finish, laughing. It became a big tale, one that made everyone feel good. Clara wasn't helpless, she never had been. She was a force, a quiet, strong lady who didn't let bullies win. And Max? He was her partner, her protector, a dog with a past that made him unbeatable. No one dared bother Clara again. Not after that. If someone new came to town and looked at her funny, a kid would tug their sleeve and say, "Don't mess with her dog's a hero." That was enough. The message was clear, Clara and Max were special, and Oak Ridge was proud to have them. The pity was gone, replaced by respect, big, shiny respect that glowed like the sun. So, what happened after the bikers left? Life went on, but better. Clara kept living her quiet days, rocking on her porch, walking with Max. The town kept being its small, happy self, but with a new story to tell. Spike and his gang? They faded away, a bad memory nobody missed. And the lesson? Oh, it was a good one: don't judge people by what you see. Clara looked small and blind, Max looked like just a dog, but together? They were unstoppable. Oak Ridge learned that, and they'd never forget it. What do you think? Pretty cool ending, right? Stick around for the last part, it's gonna make you smile even more. Hey there, awesome viewers. We've made it to the end of this wild story about Clara and Max. Wow, what a ride, right? Bikers, a big showdown, and a super cool dog. It's been exciting. But now, let's slow down a little and talk about what it all means. Stories like this aren't just fun, they teach us stuff, too. So, grab a comfy spot, maybe a snack, and let's think about this together. What's the big lesson here? Oh, it's a good one, and I can't wait to share it with you. First, let's look back at Clara and Max. When we started, they seemed pretty normal, didn't they? Clara was a quiet lady who lived in a small house in Oak Ridge. She couldn't see, so she used a cane, tap, tap, tap to get around. People in town saw her walking every day with Max, her big German Shepherd guide dog, and they thought they knew her. "Poor Clara," they'd whisper. "She's blind, she must be weak, she must need help all the time." They felt sorry for her, like she couldn't do much on her own. And Max? He looked like just a regular dog, big, sure, but nothing fancy. He stayed by Clara's side, quiet and calm, helping her walk. People thought, "Oh, that's a nice dog, but he's probably not special." But guess what? Looks can fool you. Clara wasn't weak at all. She was tough, really tough. She didn't let those mean bikers scare her, even when they shouted and roared their engines. She stood there, calm and steady, every single time. And Max? He wasn't just any dog. He was a retired Navy SEAL canine, a superhero dog trained to fight bad guys and protect people. Together, Clara and Max were unstoppable. They didn't look like much to the bikers or the townsfolk, but they had power inside them, big, amazing power that came out when it needed to. Isn't that cool? So, here's the big lesson: you can't always tell how strong someone is by looking at them. Clara seemed small and quiet, like she couldn't do big things. Max seemed ordinary, like he was just there to help her walk. But they proved everyone wrong. Spike and his biker gang laughed at them, thinking they were easy to pick on. The people in Oak Ridge felt bad for Clara, thinking she couldn't handle trouble. But when the moment came, bam, Clara and Max showed the truth. They didn't need to yell or show off. They just waited for the right time to shine, and when they did, everyone's jaws dropped. Think about that for a second. Have you ever seen someone like that in your life? Maybe there's a kid at school who doesn't talk much. You might think, oh, they're shy, they don't do anything cool. But then one day, they surprise you. Maybe they're super good at drawing, or they win a race, or they help someone when no one else does. Or maybe there's an adult you know, a neighbor, a teacher, your grandma, who seems boring or weak, but then you find out they did something amazing once, like saving a cat from a tree or standing up to a bully. People can hide their strength, just like Clara and Max did. You don't always see it right away, but it's there, waiting to come out. Let's imagine you're walking down your street tomorrow. You see someone quiet, maybe an old man sitting on a bench, or a girl reading a book by herself. What do you think about them? Do you think they're not important, or they can't do much? Well, hold on. That old man might have been a firefighter who saved people from burning houses. That girl might be super smart and inventing something cool in her room. You don't know their story just by looking. Clara taught us that. She looked like a regular lady, but she had guts, big guts, and Max by her side. The strongest heroes don't always shout about it. They don't need to. They just wait, quiet and ready, until it's time to be awesome. Now, let's talk about you. Yeah, you. What if you're a hidden hero? Maybe you don't feel strong sometimes. Maybe you think, I'm not loud, I'm not big, I'm not the best at everything. But that doesn't mean you're weak. Nope. You've got your own power inside, like Clara's courage or Max's speed. Maybe you're good at helping your friends when they're sad. Maybe you're great at solving problems, like figuring out a puzzle or fixing a toy. Maybe you're patient, waiting for the right moment to do something big. You don't have to show it off every day. It's okay to be quiet, to keep it secret, until the time is right. Then pow, you can shine, just like Clara and Max did in that park. And what about the people around you? Your town, your school, your family, they're full of hidden heroes too. That kid who's always alone? Maybe they're brave in ways you can't see. That teacher who's super strict? Maybe they've got a story that would blow your mind. The lesson here is to look closer. Don't just decide someone's weak or boring because they're not loud or flashy. Give them a chance. Watch them. Listen to them. You might be surprised, just like the folks in Oak Ridge were when Max took down Spike. Looks can trick you, but the truth? It's way more exciting. Let's think about Spike and the bikers for a minute. They judged Clara fast. They saw her cane, her blind eyes, her quiet walk, and thought, easy target. They saw Max's harness and thought, dumb dog. They were so sure they knew everything. But they didn't. They missed the real Clara, the one who wouldn't back down. They missed the real Max, the warrior who could stop them in one jump. And because they judged her wrong, they lost. Spike ended up in the dirt, scared and sorry, and his gang ran off with nothing. That's what happens when you think you've got it all figured out but don't look deeper. You miss the good stuff, and sometimes, you get a big surprise. So, next time you see someone quiet, don't assume you know their story. Don't think, oh, they're weak, or they're boring. Maybe they're hiding something amazing, just waiting for the perfect moment to show it. Maybe they've got a Max in their life, a friend, a pet, a secret skill that makes them unstoppable. You won't know until you give them a chance. Clara didn't need to tell everyone she was tough. Max didn't need to bark all the time to prove he was strong. They just did their thing, and when the time came, wow, they shone like stars. What do you think about that? Could you spot a hidden hero in your town? Maybe it's someone you see every day but don't really notice. Maybe it's the lady who walks her dog, or the boy who sits in the back of class, or even the janitor at school. Who knows what they've got inside them? I bet there's someone out there, right now, who's quiet but super cool, just waiting to surprise you. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever met someone like Clara or Max? Someone who seemed ordinary but turned out to be extraordinary? I'd love to hear your stories. This tale about Clara and Max got my heart racing, and I hope it did yours too. If it made you jump, laugh, or cheer, hit that like button, it lets me know you had fun. And if you want more stories like this, wild twists, brave heroes, and big surprises, smash that subscribe button. I've got tons more to tell you, and I can't wait to share them. You're the best viewers ever, and I'll see you next time with another awesome adventure. Bye for now, and keep looking for those hidden heroes they're out there, waiting to shine. Okay, let's keep going a bit more because this lesson is so fun to talk about. Imagine you're Clara for a day. You're walking through your town, and people don't think you're tough. They see you and think, oh, just another person. But inside, you've got something special. Maybe you're brave, maybe you're smart, maybe you've got a cool talent. You don't tell them. You don't need to. You just keep going, doing your thing, until one day bam, you show them what you've got. How would that feel? Pretty great, right? That's what Clara did. She didn't brag. She didn't fight back every time the bikers teased her. She waited, and when the moment came, she and Max were unstoppable. Or imagine you're Max. You're quiet, you don't make a fuss, but you're ready. You've got skills, big skills, and nobody knows it until it's time. Then you jump in, fast and strong, and everyone's like, whoa, where did that come from? That's how Max was. He didn't bark at the bikers every day. He didn't chase them or growl just to look tough. He saved it all up for that one big moment in the park, and when he moved, wow, it was like magic. You can be like that too. You don't have to show off all the time. Save your strength, wait for your chance, and then shine bright. Let's picture Oak Ridge after the story. The town's quiet again, no more bikers zooming around. Clara's on her porch, rocking in her chair, creak, creak, and Max is lying there, big and calm. Kids ride by on bikes, waving at her. Hi, Clara. Hi, Max, they yell. She waves back, smiling a little. People don't feel sorry for her anymore. They look at her and think, she's awesome. They look at Max and think, he's a hero. That's what happens when the truth comes out. People see you for real, not just what's on the outside, but what's inside too. Now, think about your own town. Who's the Clara there? Who's the Max? Maybe it's someone you've walked past 100 times but never really saw. Maybe it's you. You don't need a cane or a guide dog to be strong. You just need something special inside, something that makes you brave, or kind, or smart. And when you get the chance to show it, oh boy, it's going to feel so good. Clara didn't let the bikers win, and Max didn't let them hurt her. They stood up, and they won. You can do that too, in your own way. This story's over, but the idea sticks with us. Looks can fool you, don't trust them. The quiet ones, the small ones, the ones who don't talk big, they might be the strongest of all. Clara and Max proved it, and now it's your turn to look around. Find the heroes hiding in plain sight. Maybe say hi to someone new tomorrow. Ask them about their day. You might find out they've got a story just as cool as Clara's. And if this tale made you smile or cheer, let me know in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon with more fun stuff. You're amazing, and I can't wait to hang out again. Bye.